welcome. Today's April 29th, which is the anniversary of the day in 1952 when Agnes Baron met Meher Baba. As you probably know, Agnes Baron was a co-founder and lifetime caretaker of Marymount. In fact, I'm not sure there would be a Marymount without Agnes. So we're going to start with that story. And Sam's going to tell it about Agnes finding out about Meher Baba, coming to Marymount, and meeting Meher Baba. So Cassandra?
Yeah, so while people are talking, if everybody would mute themselves. And when you do want to chime in, it helps if you raise your hand electronically. There's a little spot down, where is it? Under reactions? Yeah, under reactions, you'll see the icon at the bottom. You'll see raise hand. If you want to comment or have a story to tell, you're welcome to do that.
Right.
It's definitely participatory. But in the meantime, please keep yourselves muted because background noise can make it hard. And let's see, where are the bathrooms? The bathrooms are, I think that's it for the housekeeping.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. So we thought we would sort of tell the story reading it, and you would see some of the pictures that way.
Okay. So, Hellfire and Damnation, keeping Marymount for Meher Baba. When Agnes Baron, co-founder, lifetime caretaker, and one-time owner of Marymount, first met Avatar Meher Baba in 1952, he said, "First of all, I want Agni to know that only Agni, God, and Baba know what she has gone through in these 6 years to hold Marymount for me." Agnes looked at him in surprise and said, "It was no trouble, Baba, no trouble at all." She had completely forgotten all her problems in his presence. And I didn't tell him anything. I said, "Trouble, what do you mean, Baba?" And here I had been dying of anxiety. And when Baba said trouble, I thought, well, how silly. I didn't have any trouble. It just completely vanished. It's a fact. So the whole time in his presence, all my problems meant nothing. Everything was just wiped out. Agnes later talked about that time at Marymount. For 6 years, I stayed at Marymount and I slaved like a fool. I had to pay the mortgage. All I had for income was a patch of strawberries. And I would go down and peddle them from door to door in Ojai, and they were very sweet. During those 6 years, 1946 to 1952, she continued, I had these people, professors come up, and somebody would say, "What are you doing? You don't know that guy, Meher Baba. Why are you staying with him?" I said, "I don't know. I did not know." Then Agnes met Meher Baba. She said, "There are no words to describe it. It was so fantastic. All my doubts just flew out the window. The first thing Baba did was to open his arms and put my head on his shoulders. Something out of this world happens to you when Baba puts his arms around you. It's indescribable. What I saw sitting on the couch and what I felt was sitting on the couch were two different things. Without any more rationalizing, I accepted him 100%. The love just poured out of him. His vibrations were like a hummingbird. You couldn't see the vibrations, but you knew the vibrating. You felt that in Baba. His eyes were so full of compassion, just utterly irresistible. I was hooked. That was it. I didn't care about obedience. I didn't give a damn about anything like that. He was utterly irresistible. Afterwards, I was consciously watching him to see if he was going to make any mistakes. But deep down, I had already accepted him. Then Agnes's journey to Marymount. It started just after she returned from Europe, as the U.S. was nearing entry into World War II in 1941. Agnes, who was 34 years old at the time, was disillusioned and disheartened at what she had seen in Europe. She came to California and found inspiration and meaning studying Vedanta. But she left the Vedanta group in Hollywood after 2 years, accusing the Swami of being a hypocrite and a fallen yogi. She had high standards. She went to live at another Vedanta center in La Crescenta, California, who was asked to leave because her typing late into the night disturbed the other residents. They suggested she go next door to another retreat. That's where she met Jean Adriel and Alexander Markey, disciples of Meher Baba. They had established the New Life Center in La Crescenta, and you see a photograph here of what it looked like back in those days, in late 1944, and dedicated it to Meher Baba. Agnes professed no interest in Meher Baba at the time, but she was invited to live in a cottage there, and she decided to stay. Jean told Agnes she was a writer too, and asked Agnes to edit the book Avatar. When Agnes found much of the writing too sentimental for her taste, she was nevertheless impressed by the central subject, Meher Baba. Agnes said she would only edit the book if she could take a red pen and cross out a lot of that saccharine language. However, Agnes swore to herself not to be taken in. Later, sometime in 1946, Jean told Agnes that Meher Baba had written from India to find a place at least 2 hours away from a big city. One afternoon, the group was going to Ojai Valley, and they invited Agnes along for the ride. Agnes was the one who spotted a curious stand of trees atop Sulphur Mountain and insisted they investigate. When Agnes jumped the fence to explore the property that would become Meher Mount, she had crossed the threshold to her destiny in work and service for the rest of her life.
That's newspaper.
This is a newspaper announcing the purchase of Meher Mount for Meher Baba and the dedication in 1946. So Agnes stays at Meher Mount after everyone else leaves. Jean and Alexander Markey, that is, closed escrow on the property on July 31, 1946. Agnes, still uncertain about Meher Baba, moved in with the group. She wanted to be the, quote, outdoor man. She wasn't on the board. So I learned how to prune fruit trees, how to run a tractor. I did all that stuff. The tractor was a little steel Caterpillar. I did all that stuff, and I didn't know before, Agnes said. And after 1 year, Jean decided to go to India, and then she made everybody else leave. There were about 10 people, and she made them all leave and wanted me to stay. I said, I'm not interested in your Baba. Why should I stay? Jean said, I want you to stay until I find out what Baba wants. So finally, it ended up with her going away and my staying on. I was here alone, keeping the place. In the photograph, you see what we call the Baba house, what she called it, because that's the little guest house that Baba stayed in, 1 bedroom, living room, bathroom, basically. And it was next to the main house, which is to the left in this photograph, connected by the little flat roof. Agnes said the reason she agreed to stay is because she thought it would be only a month or so. The next thing Agnes knew, Jean had returned to Hollywood and came to Meher Mount saying she was going to sell the place. Agnes still didn't know what to do, and Jean told her, well, just wait until I can sell the place. And then a businessman. Sometime later, according to Agnes, Jean turned up with a businessman whose last name was Bosberg. He pretended to be interested in Baba, Agnes said. Anyway, to make a long story short, he pulled a very dirty trick. He pretended to be interested in Baba, and he insisted on having the property in his name. As an aside, it's not clear from research to date that Bosberg actually had his name on the property, but Agnes thought he did. And when that was done, Agnes continued, he told somebody else, ha ha, I played a good trick. I'm not interested in Baba. I just said that to get the property. I'm going to have a big hotel here, and I'm going to have all the psychics. Can you imagine anything worse than that? Agnes asked. And when I heard that for the first time, I wrote to Baba. I knew that somebody was lying and cheating, so I wrote him the whole story because on principle, I hate anybody who tries to cheat somebody else. So I wrote a really polite and formal letter. Without thinking, I just wrote down, and Baba, if you want Meher Mount, I'll keep it for you through hell, fire, and damnation. I signed it and sent it off. Now, why did I do that? She asked herself when she was telling the story in Mandalay Hall in Mehersad, India in 1982. It's only in hindsight that I see that from the very beginning, a little string that Baba had me like a little fish, pulling me along like this. So anyway, I sent it off. And so he had been doing that all this time to keep me to my promise of hell, fire, and damnation. Meher Baba wrote back what she called a very sweet letter, saying he appreciated and loved Agnes very much, and that she by all means should keep Meher Mount for him. I didn't say anything to the man, Bosberg. Agnes continued, but I made up my mind that this place is not his. He lied to get it in his name, mind you. I said, look, stop writing this nonsense. This place isn't yours. It belongs to Meher Baba. Make up your mind to that. And I said, from now on, I'm not going to write you anymore. Not going to answer any of your stupid letters. And I said, enough. So anyway, I received no more letters, she said. John Starr Cook becomes an owner. When John Cook turned up sometime around 1948, John Starr Cook was a member of the family of the heirs to the Castle and Cook of Hawaii fortune. He was a restless young man exploring many mystical, occult, and counterculture movements. He expressed a deep interest in Meher Baba and offered to help Agnes secure Meher Mount from the grasp of Bosberg. At the same time, he insisted the way to do that meant putting the property into his name. It appears this effort was successful, as it was recorded as in the name of John S. and Wilma V. Belknap Cook when it was transferred to Agnes Baron's name on November 24, 1959, as directed by Meher Baba. Research has not so far turned up county records of an earlier transfer of Meher Mount to Bosberg or to the Cook family, for that matter. Agnes says John Cook secured the property, paid off the mortgage, and provided her with several $100s a month for about 6 years. He told her to do as she felt best in operating Meher Mount for Meher Baba. In September 3, 1956 letter from Adi K. Irani to Agnes, Adi wrote, I sent your letter to Baba and he informed me through Mani, Meher Baba's sister, that whatever you say about Meher Mount is okay with him. The letter continued, he deeply appreciates your love and feelings and sends his love to you. Agnes says that in 1952, John came back to Meher Mount from North Africa, paralyzed, and as she put it, something happened to his mind and he was taking mind-altering drugs. When Agnes called him on his behavior and his drug taking, he got angry and said he wanted his money back. She quoted John Cook as saying, God has whims and God changes his mind and I am God. Agnes reported that with his sister's help, he wrote to Baba for support, and Adi sent a copy of his letter to Agnes along with Baba's reply to John, in which Baba said, I love Agnes dearly and I trust her implicitly and she's staying on at Meher Mount. Then John and his sister angrily left Meher Mount. Agnes's account of her 1952 meeting with Baba in Myrtle Beach included Baba telling her, I don't want John connected with the name of Meher Baba with Meher Mount, that he doesn't have love. Now you must get him out of the picture entirely. But he said, no coercion. And in November 15, 1957 letter, from Adi K. Irani, Meher Baba's secretary wrote, P.S. Dear Agnes, Baba prefers to have the entire Meher Mount transferred in your name. It took almost 7 years for Agnes to convince John and his wife Wilma to willingly transfer Meher Mount to Agnes Baron. She said, so I had to pay the whole amount. I had to take on the whole thing, mortgage and expenses again. There appear to be several transactions related to Agnes's efforts to finance the property from 1959 to 63. Agnes was 100% responsible for Meher Mount, and she carried that responsibility all alone.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Thank you, Sam.
Any questions, comments at this stage?
Yes,
So-
I've never heard that full story before. That was pretty amazing. I knew bits of it, but that's really, thank you for reading the whole thing. That's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Cassandra.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's one of the things that really surprised me when we got all those property records together and went through them. It was astonishing what it showed that Agnes went through to hold on to Mayor Mount. It was like a timeline of her struggles, and you could just feel how, I don't know that anybody else could have done that. I mean, it took a unique character to fight those guys off. They were trying to take it.
Yeah.
And I think that you can unmute and contribute too, that one of the things that I found and awe in awe of Agnes was she was absolutely fearless.
Mm.
And stubborn.
And stubborn, but she was fearless. She would take on anybody, anything, anywhere, anytime. And she, I don't know. Some of us are like, oh, I wonder what to think, or oh, should I do that? Or am I overstepping my bat? Not Agnes. Yeah.
Yep. That was her. That's who she was.
One of the things that occurred to me, and just kind of thinking about this gathering, is some of the folks that she interacted with in the community. And, I think of Agnes and her stories and connections and whatnot, but it's also interesting. I don't know, Sam, if you knew Joe Nesbitt, he was a banker at Santa Paula, I think Citizens Bank.
Didn't really know him.
And community activist, enjoyed the best of many worlds, banker, rancher, appointed official, equestrian, community booster. But as a banker, he helped arrange title company and recording of passing of the deed to Maher Mount. In other words, that was something that before Agnes died, we set up, here's a life estate, but when you pass along, the property automatically goes. But anyway, he had a history with Agnes, and I, enjoyed catching up with him as someone that, she worked with some interesting people. Alan Teague was actually a mayor of Santa Paula. I had like I don't know, father or grandfather was a congressman, and they had a big lemon ranch, literally like 600 acres, and then other things, avocados and other things as well. But Alan was a person you could count on in a time of need, always look after others' interests. Anyway, just interesting people. Dennis Renault is just another person to come to mind. He was a political cartoonist actually for the Ventura Star Ledger, and then went in 1971 to the Sacramento Bee, and he had, I don't know, something like 600 cartoons when he retired in '98, and always gave her a roll, of these cartoons from each year. And he and his wife were just really wonderful people. I met him on a couple of occasions. And there's some other people too that came in later on. You all may know George Stewart with his absolutely incredible historical figures that are very accurate to scale. And he'd have monologues that he would talk about everybody, all these figures and personalities. And then another guy who actually has the Primavera Gallery in Ojai, Khalid Al-Awar. Ken Cedar knows him as well, owned the movie theater, I think. Anyway, just some backstory of all these intrigues.
It's so interesting that she knew an unbelievable array of people in so many different walks of life that, through 55 years of association with her, you had almost that many yourself. I was always amazed at how many connections she had with such fascinating people in many different fields. Shall we move to the?
Do you want to show the film?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question though. Sam, did she was she well known in Ojai?
She was pretty well known in Ojai, but she had a lot of friends there.
Mm-hmm.
But she also had a reputation for being a little obstreperous and not always easy to deal with.
Yeah. Go figure.
Yeah, I know where they got that idea.
Who would have guessed? Well, We're gonna get a little flavor of that.
Yeah. So
little
to answer your question, she also did a lot of substitute teaching in Santa Paula.
Yes.
Ah,
And so,
Oh, right.
and she would volunteer for the Santa Paula Library to go around and collect overdue books. So I found this out because somebody posted on Facebook and they go, you know, we've never had such a good return rate since then.
She also helped set up the first Head Start program in Ventura County. She was very active, you know, she
Yeah,
did
I would not
so
like
many
to
things.
have, I would not like to have Agnes Baron show up on my front door.
Yeah, she was.
Say, you have an overdue book.
You have an overdue book, give me $40.
For the
And
young
the book.
people who went up there in the 60s, I mean, she was always challenging. That's one trait you could count on. She was always going to challenge you. And anybody who showed up, she called them pink cloud, you know, the people walking on a pink cloud and would come up there with very impractical views of things. She would almost take delight in
Mhm.
you know, beating them down a little bit, just to crack them open. She once said, I may not be able to fill people up, but I can sure crack them open.
And you need a hammer for that. All right, should we watch this little film? Anybody else have any comments before we?
This will give you a sense of her person's.
Yeah, I love this. I never discovered it until today, this morning, I think, right, or yesterday.
Yesterday.
Let me show you this.
It's on Marymount's YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Irwin Luck footage that was pieced together just recently again.
From the 70s.
Probably 68 is my guess,
Okay.
looking at the film.
Oh, man, I did that wrong. Sorry. See, I'm out of practice. It's been a while. There you go.
Better you than.
Here we
Okay,
go.
I'm gonna mute.
Let me get my.
There it is. Just-
Oh, this is great.
Oh, wait, I forgot to turn sound on. My bad. Hang on. Let's start again. I don't care. I'm making a fool of myself.
Was planted
There we
on
go.
one of Baba's birthdays,
There's
and it's a very slow grower. And
start again.
yes, that is the tree, a deodar tree that was planted on one of Baba's birthdays, and it's a very slow grower. And it's a slow grower, like them, says Tim. Very small when Baba saw it. I can't remember how old it really is, and you can't tell by the height because the deer nipped it when it was about 5 feet high, so that it now. I really don't know how high it really should be. Those are, of course, they live thousands of years. And I told Baba I had planted a sequoia tree, and that I would have a rendezvous with him in 700 years when he came back, and he just grinned and waved his finger. But it's that one is free. Well, kids, you know, as the saying goes, when every weed you pull is one samskara that you plop up. Doesn't that feel good?
Who first told you that?
Don't you get a thrill? Ah, God. No, but that's an old saying. And Baba commented on, you know, every tree, every blade of grass, practically. What is this? What's that? And this usual manner of terrific interest in even the smallest thing, you know. When I drove Bob up from Los Angeles in that rather battered station wagon, I opened the door. Bob was still seated there. I opened the door from my side, and little collie came bouncing up. And she was a beautiful half collie and shepherd. I opened the door and I said, "Baba, meet the spirit of Mayermont, collie." And so Baba reached across the seat, and she came into the car and lifted her head up to him, with a laughing sort of face. And he put his hand on her head very gently, very sweetly, and just, looked at her for the longest time. And then finally said that now that she had been touched by the avatar, she would be a human being in the next life. And the dog looked as if she really understood us. She was so sweet. And she just sat there with her mouth open, just gazing right at him. It was very sweet. Well, all right. So Bob and I arrived here. He was still hanging onto my arm. And I said, "This is your tree, Baba." I've let the limbs come down so that it would enclose it. And I think it's a very lovely little temple, isn't it? So I came in with him, and he walked over, and I stayed about halfway through, and he walked over right to this spot, and there he sat down, and he squatted here like this, and just then the others came panting up to the doorway, and they were rushing forward. He went very severely, "No, no," and pushed them back. I mean, with his hand, waved them back. And they stood there in a circle. And he sat here very, very silently, very solemnly. And you just felt worlds moving. But he really, very seriously for about 5 minutes before he got up. And then rejoined them. And I don't think anyone else came in. I don't know why, but he made a big issue of no one following him in. And just looked around. And you could tell by his expression that he loved it. And I think he did make that typical gesture, the beauty of it. And he did not climb the tree, as someone last week announced that they had heard that he'd climbed this tree. He certainly did not. Children do, they love it. I think he commented about the cables that came, and I explained that evidently the farmer who was here was planned to hold up limbs, and I was very concerned because the weight was so heavy. But I decided to let the limbs come down to the ground and rest, which they have. And over the years, you see, it makes a complete little enclosure, perfect little temple. Bob was so extraordinary interest in Florida theater.
You're on mute.
Sorry.
I paused that. We'll come back to it in a minute. Sorry. I've lost my skills. I've lost my my multitasking skills. But Sam, did you want to comment on that? We're going to skip ahead to the inside because there's a section of the film that you can't hear very well. I can't make it out.
Well, one comment is people may have known Marianne Jarman, who was later Marianne Barnhart. She was in that film early on, and Martha Markoff at the time, and Martha Aubin now, who's here with us today, was in that
I thought
film.
that was her.
Yeah, and I was in there for a flash, and then a couple of people that I'm not sure I remember their names. Erwin and Edwin Luck. Erwin was taking the film, I think, and that was Edwin that we saw walking near Baba's car, the Woody station wagon and things like that. So some of the people, and then the rest is pretty self-explanatory. It gives you a flavor of what Agnes was like, her energy, vivid personality.
And it was great to see Baba's tree again.
Yeah, and seeing
Yeah.
Baba's tree,
Looking like that,
yeah, which was still much closer to the way it was when he was there.
Okay, well, now we're going to skip to a section inside where she tells us a very interesting story.
One person particularly happy. This is Baba's room. We called it that from the very beginning.
It's wrong.
And it had been set aside in the early days as a meditation center. Not too many people. But you always have to remember that your words come back to haunt you. And my first letter to Baba, before I met him, there were a lot of really graspy people trying to get a hold of Mayor Mount. Very ruthless. And I became very indignant and very protective, so I thought I'd have to help Baba. And so I said, Baba, I'll hang on to Mayor Mount for you for hellfire and damnation. That's exactly what he's doing. So you have to be very careful what you say to him. Always. Because there's no escaping afterwards. That's the only explanation I have for all the ups and downs and the, you know. So on one of the occasions when Baba called me over, he was looking very solemn and very as impressive as only Baba can look. And he stood probably diametrically in the middle. And one of the Mandali was here. I can't remember whether it was Eric or Adi. And Baba said, I want Agni to know that I love Mayor Mount very, very much. And then, of course, that typical gesture of very, very much. And I am very happy that he really beamed. I mean, he just glows. He had been very tired with the trip from Myrtle Beach to Washington to LA. And he just stood here and he was very, very happy. And he looked at it. And then he said, and I want her to know that Mayor Mount has a very spiritual atmosphere. And of course, I made my usual wisecrack. I don't know what it was. Stared at me and repeated it. It has a very spiritual atmosphere. Then I think I went out. And then this was repeated throughout the day. I was always yanked back in again for some other event. And on another occasion, he was in here alone, sitting in that chair, which is in that same position. And he called Charmian. She was already here. And I said, you have a camera? And she said, yes. So he said, I want Agnes to have a special memento of this day. And he said, we'll take a picture. So he was sitting there, and I came in and sort of knelt down by the side. And she took two good colored pictures, which I cherish very much even now. But he was, throughout the day, he was doing these fantastic, these really wonderful, these personal little gestures that, you know, that he always does to make one person particularly happy. LA, he'd put his hand out and repeat.
So, question.
Comments, questions? Because I'll tell a story that's kind of related to that trip. Do you want to put up on the screen the story that says number 2, I don't love everybody?
Okay, give me a second.
Oh, do we know who was taking those videos?
Yeah. Irwin and Edwin Luck.
Oh, they were, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thought I recognized one of them there, but
Yeah, and the
so
footage,
young in that photo, I couldn't tell for sure.
it had the footage many years, and just maybe 2 years ago at the most, Irwin contacted us and said, you know, we have some old footage, so if you're interested, we'll try to put some of it together it's pretty messy. And we said, sure, we do. We want it. And so, you know, we made a contribution and he sent us some, it still needed work. So we got some further work done by.
In what format was it?
The sound.
I don't know.
Oh.
Bruce Wilson. Yeah, and I think we may still have another better version coming. So continue to work on that.
Yeah, but it's available right on the YouTube channel.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you can watch it. There's a little bit more of it that we didn't watch today.
I think they took it in
I'll
super.
post it in the chat, the link to that.
Oh,
Cool.
good.
There you go. If anybody wants to watch it. Any other comments, questions, stories before we go on? Susan,
Susan?
Susan, did you raise your hand? You need to unmute her.
No, Susan.
I have a story to share. I don't know if this is the right time.
Sure.
I wrote it out this morning because I'm shy. So I'm just going to read it. It's not too long. I was helping a friend move from Arizona to the Bay Area where I lived. This was 1984. I was a Baba person and had told her about him. She was driving a big truck filled with her stuff. It was hot and we were tired. There was a lot of anxiety because she was moving to a new city, pretty much broke, with no idea about what was going to happen when we got there. I remembered hearing about Agnes Baron in Mount and felt we needed a rest and some Baba energy. So we rewrote it a little in Southern California and went to Ojai. We arrived with no warning, just dropped in. Agnes acted like we stragglers were long-awaited guests. Her warmth and charm were in full force. She figured out quickly that my friend was new to Baba and in a state of flux, and took her under her wing. We stayed for 2 or 3 days, Agnes kindly ministering to us the whole time. It was before the fire, and we stayed in a lovely guest house. I remember yellow light and flowers. Both my friends... I remember once Agnes brought us to the tree near where Baba sat. She asked us where we thought he sat. I gave an answer which was wrong, and Alice told us where he really sat under the tree, which we just saw. I said that I was thinking that, but then I thought it was too obvious. Alice told me very seriously that Baba was about simplicity, and we shouldn't make things too complicated with our minds, which was the message I needed to hear. Both my friend and I were students in Antioch, San Francisco, which has since closed down. Agnes went to the original Antioch in Ohio, which she loved, and it was a big connection. She also talked to us a lot about social causes, which we also related to. She called a lot of Baba lovers yahoos, which I'm embarrassed to say we got a kick out of. She told us that she wanted Mount to be a place that helped people in need, not just a retreat for Baba lovers. We totally loved her, and by the time we left, she'd clinched it for my friend, who has remained a Baba lover ever since. I went back one other time after Agnes's accident. She asked me if I knew why she had the accident. I said something like, well, you're old, Agnes, and your balance isn't so good. She said, no, it was because of karma, and I was awed at her acceptance of something that caused her so much suffering.
Wow, Susan, you're lucky.
I know,
That was awesome.
I know.
Great story.
Great story.
What was the accident that Agnes had?
Fell off a
She
ladder, didn't
fell
she?
off a ladder when she was old,
Oh my God.
and she was very incapacitated after that.
Hmm.
I mean, and she was so energetic and so, as you all know, so able to do things, but after that she was quite incapacitated.
Approximately what year was that? Do you know?
I don't remember that year.
Late
Approximately.
80s.
What?
Bing may remember, late 80s though.
Late
What did-
80s.
Wow.
Yes, it would have been the late 80s. It would have been the late 80s because I moved back east in the early 90s.
The Antioch connection was very meaningful to Agnes. And in fact, we talked about creating a mission statement for Mount. And there were 2 sources that she liked to draw upon. One was Antioch University, and the other was Hidden Villa. I don't know if you would like, I could show something that Agnes referenced from Antioch College that she thought also applied to Marymount. I view Marymount as a place and as a spirit. And the spirit is something that, you know, Agnes represents. Of course, it's deeply infused with her. But I don't know if you're interested in that sort of thing. I have a little
Well, why
note.
don't we say maybe towards the end, we'll
Sure.
share that. Susan, I really appreciate your telling that story. I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Anybody else have any stories they want to tell?
Margaret.
Oh, Tina, let
Oh,
Tina go first.
Go, Tina.
Well, I also met Agnes,
Hmm.
and it was after the fire, and I'm not sure what year it was, maybe the 90s. But the thing that impressed me about her was she was very incapacitated. She was in bed, and yet she would read the newspaper and call up people who were homeless and invite them to come and stay at Mayhermount.
What a unique spirit. Thank you, Tina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did she greet you? Did you get to go in and see her?
Yeah, she was in a trailer.
Hmm.
She was in bed in a trailer. But the spirit was strong.
Oh, I thought you were gonna do.
Randy.
What were you?
Yeah, a friend of mine, Tom Brooks, and I went up there very early days. Agnes was there alone, I believe. It was after she had a bunch of people in the what is it, the house down below, the long house down below, the
The White House?
bunkhouse, the
We
bunkhouse.
called it the White, she called it the White House, yeah.
White House, yeah. She had some people there and they were gone. They just left maybe a year before. And Tom and I would go down there on weekends to just cut wood in the forest or firewood for her. And then developed into a few more tasks, mostly weeds, of course, that's the thing. And then after that, we got started in her beginning of their DART program there.
Yes.
And we did that for a couple of years, going down to Santa Paula on the weekends because we were all druggies, and she knew that druggies would listen to only druggies. So, you know, somebody never took drugs, they won't hear from them. So she liked that part, that we weren't using in drugs anywhere, but we had. And let's see. And then we had a phone conversation. And I accused her of some minor hypocrisy, and she told me that I could go jump in a lake. That was the last she ever wanted to see of me. But I actually returned because somebody wanted to ride with it. So I apologized, and she didn't seem to mind at all that I was there.
No.
And that's it. I don't know what year that was. That's pretty early though.
Thanks.
We enjoyed her when we were doing it. You know, got the tractor going for her so she could put around in it. Like that.
Thank you.
I'm sure, but that's one.
Okay, Margaret has you ready?
Yeah, I will share, I'll go ahead and share on my screen
Okay.
this car. Brown, you see this?
Yep.
So it was sometime in the late 70s, early 80s. Agnes needed a new car. And as you know, if you've been to Marymount, a good working car is no minor matter given its remoteness. At the time, Agnes was a substitute teacher and obviously needed transportation to the job. She also had to drive down the hill and another 15 minutes to get her drinking water, along with groceries and everything else. About that time, Sam and I received a windfall of $3,000. I don't remember why, but it seemed particularly opportune. We decided to use that windfall to get a car for Agnes. Sam scanned,
Yeah.
he didn't scam, but he scanned the newspapers and found that Hertz, the car rental company, had an auction of low mileage used cars on a lot near our home in Long Beach. He and our friend Ross Kaplan went that Saturday and found a station wagon within our price range. We knew that an important criterion for Agnes was a station wagon in order to haul things. Sam and Ross got the car and spent several hours cleaning and polishing it to make it ready to give to Agnes. The next weekend, Sam and I proudly drove the car to Marymount, about 2 hours from our home, to give Agnes her surprise, which we thought would make her life a little easier in managing Marymount. As we presented the car to her, she responded, "Brown, brown, you got me a brown car? I hate brown." Furthermore, she complained that we had gotten her a Chevrolet, or maybe it was a Ford. "Everyone," she says, "knows that Japanese cars are better. How could you have gotten me an American car?" A little deflated, but still thinking she would like it when she started using it, we left the car for her. After several visits in which she continued to complain loudly and often about the car, we finally said, "Agnes, it's your car. You can keep it, you can sell it, you can trade it in. It's yours to do whatever you want." The next time we visited her, she greeted us smiling broadly. She pointed to her new car, a white Toyota station wagon there in the background. She was very pleased with the car and with herself. At least we'd gotten the station wagon part right. More importantly, Agnes had a car that could take her up and down the mountain. She drove that car until she could no longer drive. So whatever thought we were doing, Baba took that away immediately. So
Yeah, and she was his agent. She was
really
the one who let you know.
Well, and yeah, and don't do it for credit.
Yeah.
The lesson here is if you think you're going to get credit for whatever it is, you're probably going the wrong road. Yeah, she was a good reminder of that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's just, she is such, or was, I mean, still is, I imagine, just
Yeah.
a totally honest person. She just, you saw exactly what she was about, and it's just amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, Agnes was, she wasn't everybody's cup of tea. There's no doubt about it. There were, because she would say whatever she thought, just right from the top of her head. There was no filter, almost. It's amazing. And so some people would be really taken aback, and that they weren't thanked the way they expected, or she would talk about people they knew in the Baba community and that they loved, and she would talk about them and say things about them that, that how she was no fan and stuff like that. And that would turn some people off too. So she wasn't always easy to be around, even if you were really fond of her and close to her. And she was challenging to those people who did stick around, as I said before. Anyway, but could be lots of fun and had real charm. And if somebody was in need, nobody would go as far that I've almost ever met in my life to help somebody. She was amazing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I mean, that, and the drug program that was mentioned earlier, that she started because she took it as a command from Baba, even though he was talking to, Alan Cohen and Robert Dreyfus and Rick Chapman and so on, the young people who had been in the, around the drug scene, to get young people off drugs. But she went out and started a drug program. We have a story about that too, if we want to hear it. Go ahead.
The thing with, for me with Agnes was that it seems to me that she just had an instinct for what a person needed, like with Susan's story.
Yeah.
They came up there, and as she started telling that story, I wasn't sure how it was going to go.
Oh, yeah.
Whether they got kicked out or turned back. They were embraced, and she seemed to have an instinct for that. Go here.
You're muted.
Yes,
Yes, she did.
Jai Baba.
Baba.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask you, did you ever meet, or did you know in 1978 if my father had visited Mount Meher Mount, Minu Karas?
Oh, did he go to Mayor Mount?
Yeah,
Manu,
I believe so, because I know that he met or had known Agnes. I also have, I think, some correspondence between the two of them that I came across a little while ago.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
that would be fascinating.
And I mean, I personally had never met Agnes, but she had known him from, so I was just wondering whether it was from that point, because the only time he came to the United States was in 1978. And I know he went to Myrtle Beach, and he also was in California. So I was wondering if he stopped by at Meher Mount.
You know, I'm not aware of it, but
Okay,
but I didn't live there, so.
you were not there at the time then.
There were people who got up there. I know Hoshan Barucha, for example, Dr.
Yeah, I'm
went
trying
there,
to.
and I didn't get to see him when he was there. So there were a number of people that I didn't get to see.
Mhm.
I was there when Adi came two different times, and
Right,
other people, but not, no, I didn't see Minu.
right. I was trying to make the connection as to where they would have met or came to know one another.
Well, she did go to India in 1982, so. possibly
It could have been then. Absolutely. Yes, yes, it could have been then. Because I think the communication that I read was, I'm not sure of the date, but it might have been in the late 80s or sometime after 82. So that must, okay, you solved my, and
But
it was quite a passionate letter that she had communicated with Dad. I can't seem to remember, and I must look for it again. But it seemed to me that she had had a falling out with somebody close around here in our circles. and she just let loose in the letter, and then my father corresponds with her. So it was quite interesting to read. Yeah. So if I find that, I will certainly put it aside and bring it to your attention when we meet.
We would love
Hopefully next year.
to see that.
Very
Yes.
awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Jai Baba. Thank you.
Hey,
Jai
Baba,
Baba.
thank you.
Well, you know, we have some more things. If people want to hang out for a while, you want to go into some more?
Yeah, we have several stories that we could tell about Agnes.
Do you want to tell the long reach of the Hopi story?
Yeah.
All
You
right,
want to
let's
know a
do
little bit
that.
about Agnes and the Hopi Indian?
Any chance you can put that up, Margaret? I'm having
Yeah, I
trouble.
can. I
Okay.
absolutely can.
Thank you.
There are so many stories about
Yeah.
Agnes, about, how she started the drug program and bullied the county supervisors into funding it and
Mhm.
so on. I mean, just so many things happened with her. This is a story, The Long Reach of the Hopi. In the summer of 1972, Agnes Baron asked me and my wife at the time, Martha Urban, now Martha Aubin, who's on and may want to rebut anything I say here or agree.
No, but I want to talk too, but
Good,
at some
I'm
point.
sure.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Anyway, Agnes asked us to drive her to Phoenix, Arizona, because she wanted to visit some drug programs that she thought might be models for improving Ventura County's drug prevention and treatment programs, which she had, of course, started the DART drug abuse reorientation training program, and it ran for 2 or 3 years successfully. She also expressed interest in visiting the Navajo and Hopi Indian reservations. We used our vacation time to make the trip with Agnes in our little 1965 Volkswagen station wagon. After finishing our week or so of research into drug rehab programs in the Phoenix area, we headed for Indian country. This is Montezuma Castle near Humphreys Peak. And the castle, in those days, you could walk up there into it. Now I'm not sure that's allowed anymore. This was 1972. We drove north from Phoenix, stopping at Montezuma Castle National Monument, which was built by the Sinagua people and inhabited from 1200 to 1450 AD when their civilization collapsed. Montezuma Castle is possibly the best preserved cliff dwelling in North America. In those days, we were free to climb the steps up to the cliff dwelling and spend some time getting a feeling for the place. Now it could only be viewed from the canyon floor below. This is a picture of Agnes going up to Montezuma's castle. You could see her kind of childlike, she had a childlike sense of wonder and curiosity always about everything. But we continued north through Flagstaff, Arizona, and drove around the San Francisco Mountains, the highest Humphreys Peak, rising out of the desert to 12,333 feet. These mountains are considered sacred to 13 nearby Indian tribes. For the Hopi, the peaks are the home of the Kachina spirits who have become clouds after their deaths. Dominating the landscape for many miles around, there was snow on Humphreys Peak, even in the hot desert summer. Agnes' enthusiasm for everything. Throughout this trip, Agnes had displayed her usual childlike curiosity and enthusiasm. She was interested in everything, the drug programs, of course, and also the magnificent scenery, the history, current status of the Indian tribes, and the desert itself. This was a picture of the station wagon we were driving. It would hit 70 on the flat, pretty much top speed. We all enjoyed the trip, although Agnes could be challenging, as I said, at any moment. For example, one day on an empty highway in Navajo country, we were driving uphill where the land sloped up at an almost unnoticeable angle. And I had the gas pedal pressed to the floor and could barely get to about 65 miles an hour. Agnes said to go faster. I replied that this was as fast as my little car could go on the slope. Agnes became upset, and she was sure we could go faster and that I must be dogging it. She stayed angry for quite a while at what she saw as my stubbornness. Agnes says, and then she says no to spending money for a hotel. That evening, after visiting Canyon de Chelly, Martha and I mentioned looking for a moderately priced hotel where we could spend the night. Agnes would have none of it. She said she would not allow us to spend the money for a hotel. So we pulled off the road and slept in our sleeping bags beside the car, and it was cold. We slept out a couple of more nights on the way home, including one night on the south rim of the Grand Canyon National Park at about the 7,000 foot level. And it was very cold, especially that next morning. I watched Agnes get out of her sleeping bag with difficulty. And she was in her late 60s at the time. She was very stiff, and it took her quite a while to warm up her joints. Clearly, her arthritis was causing a lot of discomfort, but she never complained and showed only a cheerful welcoming of the day. And then the story of taking the road less traveled, the Hopi Reservation.
This is the Hopi.
It's approximately 1.5 million acres surrounded by the Navajo Reservation totally. The day after Canyon de Chelly, we visited more archaeological sites as well as a couple of Navajo communities and markets. We eventually drove to the Hopi Reservation, which is located entirely inside the Navajo Reservation. When we came to Third Mesa, we knew that perched on top of the mesa was the village of Old Oribe, established in about 950 AD and said to be the oldest continuously inhabited settlement in North America. Agnes, Martha, and I had all read the Book of the Hopi by Frank Waters and Oswald White Bear Fredericks, published by Penguin Books 1963. This book, written with the help of some 30 Hopi elders, covers the origin of the Hopi, who believe that they are the oldest inhabitants of the Americas, the four migrations, the origin of the clans, the ceremonies, and so forth. We were curious to see this most conservative of Hopi villages. We knew that the Hopi tended to be quite private and wary of strangers. As we started driving up the mesa, we came to a fork in the road, and I took what appeared to be a less traveled path. I became a little concerned as the road gradually disappeared, and we ascended them as we descended the mesa, ascended. And finally, I was slowly picking my way and driving over stone-strewn ground. We made it to the top of the mesa and picked up what appeared to be more of a footpath than a road, though it did seem to lead toward the village. And Agnes is drawn to an old Hopi man.
So that's the Old Oribe.
That's Old Oribe. That's the village. And this was, 19.
In the 20s,
Photo from,
maybe.
Yeah, and probably 1920s. Soon we came to a small hut where an old Hopi man sat in a simple wooden chair outside, simply serenely gazing at the horizon. Agnes said, "Stop, I want to talk with him." She got out and walked over towards him. He stood up and looked pleased to see us, so Martha and I followed Agnes over. It soon became apparent that he spoke no English, but he and Agnes managed some basic communication with gestures. He invited us into his hut, basically one room with a simple kitchen and a couple of chairs and a bed. Strings of chili peppers hung drying from the rafters. Then he took another chair from the hut and set it beside his own outside and invited Agnes to sit on it. They were both all smiles and laughing, holding hands, clearly enjoying each other's company. We took some photos of the two of them, as we've been doing throughout the trip, thinking these photos would be delightful reminders for us and Agnes of this special meeting. Finally, it was time for us to go, and we said goodbye to the old man and thanked him for his time together. And we take more photos. We drove closer to the center of the village atop the mesa and walked around some, viewing the structures, some of which were ancient, including the kiva, where sacred ceremonies are enacted. We took more photos and felt these 20 photos would be some of the best from our entire trip. On the way down the mesa, on the main road I had spurned in favor of the back road, we noticed a large sign as we looked behind us saying "No photographs" in Old Arribi by order of the tribal council. We said to each other, oh, well, if we had seen the sign on the way up, we would not have taken pictures, but now it's already done, so don't worry about it. A couple of days later, when we got back to our home, Camarillo State Hospital at the time, after delivering Agnes to Mayor Mount, we dropped off about 5 rolls of 36 exposure film to be developed at a camera shop in Camarillo. A week later, we picked up the developed photos. We were amazed to find that the 20 photos we had taken atop the mesa excuse me, at Old Arribi, including those of Agnes with the Hopi man, were completely black. All the other photos were fine. 150 other photos, no problem. Those 20, totally gone. I've often wondered how the tiny Hopi tribe could have such a long reach.
Don't mess with the Hopi. That's great. And Baba protected you from.
Yeah, from violating them.
Mhm.
Hopi.
Martha, where are you? There she is.
You're muted.
There. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, can I share something?
That's what we're waiting for.
Oh, okay.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
No, please don't be. So, I first met Agnes after the Great Darshan, and so in '69, and I spent a lot of time in the '70s at Mayor Mountain with Agnes, and I considered her the friend, not only my Baba, especially my Baba mentor, which I don't know if she would have liked that phrase, but I spent a lot of time at Mayor Mount and during the '70s, and sometimes would spend the night sleeping in a sleeping bag or in Baba's room, and cleaning the pool, pulling weeds, and just hanging out. One thing I wanted to share when we went to, Agnes was often very talkative and, and all of that. And when we drove her to Arizona, there was one moment that I was in the front seat with the passenger seat of the car, and I turned around and Agnes was in the back, sort of, maybe her legs were up on it doesn't matter, but she had been very talkative and stuff, and I turned around and I looked at her, and there was this most incredible peacefulness about her that it was just anyway, it was awesome. And that was Agnes, but we often saw this other part of her that was sometimes cantankerous, and especially if she thought people were being hypocritical, she would really lay into them. And but anyway, I felt blessed having seen this part of her, her deep spirituality, I think, in connection with Baba, and this peacefulness that she exuded. Just wanted to share that, especially.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Barbara.
Any others, Martha, like any personal encounters you had with her that stick out in your mind? Think about it, and then maybe you can share.
I just want to say, in response to what Martha said, that I think they're the same, that it's because she had such a deep connection with Baba that she could allow herself to express her cantankerousness without caring what anybody thought.
Interesting.
She was accountable only to Baba.
That's absolutely, that's a
Yeah.
good way to put it. You know, the thing that somebody said earlier, that she had an intuitive feel to how to respond to people.
Yeah.
And we would see that, like, when I, later in the 70s, late 70s and early 80s, when I would go up with Sam to work, and it was like, who's talking? Oh,
Right.
and it was like you couldn't work long enough and hard enough almost. And then somebody came up who had been rejected by the Sufis. And you saw this other side, Agnes was like, oh, let me get you a cold compress for your forehead. And here's this lounge chair. And we're over there sweating and hauling wood and pulling weeds. And this young woman is being coddled and cared for by Agnes. She's just treating her so gently and so lovingly. And that reminds me, Jeff McGuire tells this story about, many of you may know that Agnes would take calls on when people called the suicide prevention hotline. And he said one time he heard her and she said, well, all right, if you're going to do it, just do it. Go ahead. What's stopping you? And obviously, her connection with Baba, I mean, that you can only think that's what that person needed to hear. Then he said there was another time when she's on the line and she's saying to Jeff, call emergency, that she's had this intuitive feel who really needed to be stopped, who needed to be goaded, who needed to be coddled, who needed to be whatever it is. And I think that was part of her special gift. And so if you could take it, she could dish it out.
Anybody else want to share anything? I have a little something that
Steve had his hand up too.
Who? Oh, yeah, Ken, please.
Oh, Ken,
Yeah,
Steve also did.
let's get Ken before he shies away.
I don't know if I can be heard. Can I be heard?
We can hear you.
I wanted to comment on a couple of things I've heard, but one in particular that may clarify something that has been said. My brother and I in particular had the good fortune of spending about 5 years or thereabouts in her latter years, as many may know, 7 days a week. We lived with her, and when you live with somebody, it's a little bit different knowing them when you see them function 24 hours out of each day. Make a long story short, there was a day when Agnes insisted that we hire a young lady to help out with respect to caregiving, because I had a new family and a new business, and I was on 4 days in a row, then off 3, then on 4, alternating with my brother for about 5 years. Make a long story short, we did hire, or she did hire, this young lady who was very sweet, and it was all going good for a while. But one day while I was there getting ready to let her have her day off, there was a bit of a heated conversation. I forget the subject, if you would, but a heated conversation had begun between this young lady and Agnes. And I was just sort of sitting there listening, if you would, and observing, as I often did. Make a long story short, something was said and this young lady got a little bit more irritated. And then Agnes said something back. I don't recall the exchange. And the woman was just beside herself, was angry. And she made a comment to Agnes that, damn it, Agnes, or you this or you that. And Agnes looked and said, what? She said, you just said that I this and I that. And Agnes looked at her and said, I did? And she said, what do you mean you did? You just said it to me clearly. And Agnes said, well, if I said it, it must be the truth. Well, the thing that I want to give you that's more than just a comment. What it was for me, which I observed several times, I used the term Agnes wasn't home. Agnes wasn't there. Her focus was internal. And when she was speaking, in a sense, she didn't know sometimes what was coming out of her mouth. So when she said, did I say that? That was not being cute. She was as serious as could be. She had no clue of what had come out of her mouth because her attention was internal, totally focused on Baba, which I witnessed over and over and over. So when I say she wasn't home, I had never personally met anybody who could be active and so not home simultaneously. And maybe another comment Bing had suggested in chatting with Bing a while back, that maybe I should mention a story. I had the good fortune many times to see, being her her voice, if you would. I learned to understand her language and her signs to me. And so I had the good fortune of being at Marymount many times when visitors, including some of the Mandali, but one stood out of all, and it was Meru. The visit from Meru left me again in total awe. Meru got out of a car. I forget the exact who drove or whatever, but as she walked toward Agnes, who was sitting down with her back to the trailer, facing out toward the parking area, Meru approached, and Agnes and Meru didn't say one single word. They just looked into each other's eyes, and although it's a little exaggeration, I saw voltage exchange between the two. Again, I didn't really see light, but the silence was so roaring loud, and they greeted each other in total silence, not a single word. Again, and it lasted for almost an uncomfortably long moment until finally there was conversation. But to see the exchange between one of the Mandali and Agnes like that, again, it only reinforced some of those moments that I remember her basically not being home. And as far as her ability to communicate with those that what appeared that she liked or disliked, it had very little to do with her like and dislike. She was basically, again, I believe, on automatic. I watched her cuddle people that in my mind weren't worthy of her spit, pardon my language, and yet others that would come up that I thought could be some of the nicest people, she could be the crudest and the rudest. And I saw it over and over and over. Like I said, the real point I'm trying to drive home is I think that she was so focused on Baba that most of the time, or at least the latter 5 years that I was there, I don't know how much time she was really out versus in. And a closing thought, if I might, as far as speaking of Baba with his wonder of having, I forget who took the photo when Baba visited. Baba asked somebody to take a photo so that Agnes would have a memento. Well, to make a long story short, to reinforce that same story, Agnes had Len, my brother Len, and myself were caregivers for about 5 years, 7 days a week. And we had a dear friend of ours who gave us a break on Wednesdays toward the latter years of Agnes's life. So the three of us would alternate at different times at Marymount. As I say, we were on 24 hours on, we were on 3 and 4 days in a row without leaving. And Agnes was a bit of a bag lady, if anybody knew her, and it was a bit of a challenge to live in that trailer. However, the fact remains there was only one time to my memory that the three of us, that is Tom Entwistle, his name is, and my brother and myself were at Marymount at the same time. It was like a 1 in a million that all three of us were there one day. And lo and behold, a visitor comes up. And the visitor was not only a photographer, he was a professional photographer. And he took a photo of Agnes and the three of us as caregivers, which again, I remember that as being the same, how Baba gave Agnes a memory or a memento, if you would, of his visit, I guess, in 52. So there were many things that I saw and observed, but I just thought that those were a couple of real standouts, but mostly the fact of her ability to instantly, spontaneously respond to what seemed to be completely opposite of what I thought should have been going on. And she would be just totally, I believe, focused on Baba. And I don't believe that some of the words coming out of her mouth were her own. That's pretty much, that's the gist of it.
Great.
I'm going to share
stuff.
Ken's photo.
Mhm.
Can you see? There's Ken,
Oh,
and
look.
Ben and Agnes and Peter Carney. Isn't that it, Ken? Oh,
Yeah,
can you-
yeah, that's it. And
Awesome.
ironically, he was a professional photographer. Baba didn't just send somebody with a camera. Baba sent a professional photographer.
Wow.
Well, I have a little surprise to share then. This is from a DVD that Fred
Thank us.
Fred who?
Thank us.
Fred Stankus sent me, and I converted a piece of it to be playable. And let me try to play it for you now, because it might actually be you guys.
Don't move her head at the sun, honey.
Hang on a second.
Oh, yeah.
June 1991.
Well, I'll back up.
Oh, we got Max too.
Yeah, I got Max too.
Yeah, sit, Max.
Is that you guys, Ken?
There. That is, yeah, Max is at his master's feet.
Ken.
It does look like Ken.
That might be Ken on the right.
That's Naresh.
Naresh. Naresh Sharma, I recognize. He was the man who just walked away.
Who's sitting in the chair?
I think that's my brother Len, I believe.
Looks
It's
like-
either me or Len. My eyes are failing me a little bit, but
I think it's Len, but I'm not sure either.
I know one of us, we both had beards at the time and wearing those white, what do you call it, the white sweatshirts.
Uh-huh.
It was one of us.
Well, I love this when I looked at it recently, because we're looking right now at a woman who gave it all for Baba and for Mayor Mount. And I just loved watching this. I'm just going to play it one more time.
Don't move her head at the sun, honey.
Look at her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Come here.
Well, I'll back up.
Sit there. Oh, we got Max too.
Yeah, I got Max too.
Yeah, sit, Max.
I noticed Max is very obedient to your brother. If that's your brother.
There. Yeah, Max is at his master's feet.
That's sweet. That's sweet.
And Naresh still comes to Mayor Mount. We see him
Oh, really?
pretty often. Yeah.
I'll have to clean that up and send it to you. Steve, was there something you wanted to pipe in?
Well, I just wanted to share, you know, 2 or 3 recollections, and I'm not sure about the time frame, but I remember one time when Agnes was still, you know, pretty able to get around. So I'm not sure whether it was before the fire or not. Bing might know, and I think he and I were, you know, up for a work party, and we took Agnes out to dinner down in Ojai, and so she was able to, you know, must have been, you know, your BMW at the time, and we took her to a restaurant down in Ojai, and I think it was a steakhouse, and we bought her, I think she had a scotch on the rocks or something. She was really ready to go. I mean, she just she was loving this, and you know, probably got her a big steak and all the rest of it, and she just, you know, just went on and on and on. She just, you know, lit up like a Roman candle. And it was beautiful to see her in a spontaneous, comfortable situation, considering, what she was, going through all the time. And she just, I can't remember exactly the stories that she was telling, but she just was regaling, us with just her exploits and all the things that she had done. And probably mentioning a lot of her time, spent as a kind of independent journalist over in Europe before the war. And or I may have that confused, because I went after the fire, when she was finally in the trailer. I was up there with my wife Bonnie, former wife Bonnie, and I don't know whether we brought our sons up. We had done that at some point, but that would have been later on in the late, well, they were born in 88, so would have been in the 90s. And I don't know whether they were up there when Agnes was still with us. But I was up there with Bonnie, and we went into her trailer. She didn't want to come outside at that time, and she was on her bed in the trailer, and she told us to pull up chairs. So I was on one side of her bed, Bonnie was on the other, and I don't know, well, you guys never obviously knew Bonnie, but Bonnie's just her personality and Agnes's just connected, and Agnes was going on and on, probably more in detail about her exploits, and I don't know, I think Bonnie just saw her as the ultimate feminist, the kind of person. And she just, she just lit up, she just talked and talked and rambled on and all the rest of it. It was wonderful. And then one other thing and I can't remember when it was, but it was another time I was up there, probably a work party, and we were taking a break. And this time Agnes had come out and was on this like settee outside in front of the trailer, and there were some visitors that had come up to Marymount, and they were just hanging around, and they're kind of like sort of quasi hippie-ish people, and Agnes just thought they were just full of crap. And she didn't say it to them, but when they just wandered off, she just thought people like that were useless, that and it was just that was Agnes. She was honest to a fault, and but really totally appreciative if you just listened and conversed with her and talked to her. And I'm kind of a person that likes to sort of mine the depths, if I can. And it was just wonderful. It was wonderful. She was a special person. She's always been sort of my touchstone, because I'm not the kind of person that is I don't go out of my way to extol the virtues of stuff, of things, and just my relationship with Baba is perhaps different than other people's, and and Agnes was just, she, you know, she would see that and acknowledge it. And that's just the way she was. She was, she, you know, she's kind of a touchstone for me, always was.
Thank you for sharing that, Steve. That was really heartfelt, and I think we could all sense what she meant to you, as
Yeah,
all the stories we've heard.
right.
So
Yeah,
Margaret and Sam, did you want to, we're getting close to an hour and a half here, so, or we are past an hour and a half, so maybe you want to wrap it up?
Yeah.
At
Well,
least for the film, or at least for the recording. We could stay on a while if you want.
I think we have to go.
yeah, I think we've been on for a long time, and I just really appreciate everybody showing up and sharing, you know, about this pretty amazing, very special lover of Avatar, Meher Baba.
Mhm.
And that really was what she was, because that was her focus, you know. She really felt that her life was dedicated to fulfilling her promise to him. And she did the best she could at that, and meant a great deal to me in my life. And I know the lives of many of you and a lot of other people, an amazing array of people too, that, you know, there isn't time to recount it all, but I really appreciate the opportunity to share this much with all of you. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Anything, Margaret, before we end it here?
Sam said.
Well, I want to thank everybody. This has been wonderful. Let me stop the recording and we'll say goodbye.
Amazing. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.